message from the past.
Have you ever taken a second to consider our society, to consider the building blocks that make it the way it is? Even though we've made quite a bit of progress in equality, the world is still full of disparities. Is it possible to achieve true equality? In order to answer this, it might be helpful to take a look at the past, specifically at a person who courageously spoke out against the inequality she was born into, even when her words fell on deaf ears. Mary Wollstonecraft was a female writer in London in the mid-1700s, a time when women were seen as far inferior to men. Instead of conforming to gender-based oppression, she spoke out and empowered other women. People like Mary, who challenged the fundamentals of their society, made it possible for us to enjoy the privileges we have today. And to continue progressing, sometimes we have to remember what those who came before us stood for. That can be very impactful, especially at a time like this, where we seem to be heading backwards. Imagine sitting around the dinner table in your small farmhouse, surrounded by your 6 siblings, with your father taking up the head seat. He clutches a bottle, and your mother is on high alert as she places a plate in front of him, scared of him lashing out. This is the life Mary Wollstonecraft was born into. From a very young age, she was a witness to the injustices of her time period. As she grew up, those experiences poured over into her writings. In her books, she made powerful feminist statements, touched on the power of emotions, and even supported the French Revolution. The fairly bigoted society of the 1700s was extremely opposed to these ideas. In 1792, at 33 years old, she wrote her most notable work, A Vindication of the Rights of Women. It discussed how women were often written as the inferior sex, and it called upon women to assert themselves. Most importantly, she boldly asked for equality. She wrote, "I do not wish for women to have power over men, but over themselves." In this work, however, Mary also mentioned that she was unsure if women would want to leave their oppressed lives. Evidently, even the most forward-thinking feminists still battle internalized misogyny. Her life ended in 1797 while giving birth to her daughter, who many of you may know as Mary Shelley. Her last work, Maria, or The Wrongs of Women, is unfinished. It was a novel meant to liberate women, with a protagonist who disobeys gender norms. It even touched on female sexuality. Quote, "It was a fitting conclusion to the life of a feminist far ahead of her times," unquote. Throughout her entire life, Mary Wollstonecraft was incredibly bold and inspiring. She courageously defended human rights and introduced revolutionary ideas. However, her story didn't go much further than that. Raise your hands. How many of you had heard of Mary Wollstonecraft before this point? So the question is, why didn't Mary Wollstonecraft make more of a change? Why don't we remember her? The simple answer, and this is just speculation, is misogyny. Her writings and ideas were far too ahead of their time for the 1700s. Therefore, the people of that time period chose not to think about them. They didn't want to confront the injustices of their society. Consequently, they shut Mary Wollstonecraft's books and ideas out of their minds. She was forcefully forgotten. Only in 1869, 72 years after her death, did her writings come back into the public eye when the author John Stuart Mill wrote on the subjection of women. In modern times, despite what you may think, and despite the massive improvements we've made in equality, our society is still very crooked. Misogyny has found new ways to thrive. Social media has allowed for restrictive gender roles to be romanticized, for those against equality to enforce their influence, and for the normalization of unachievable beauty standards. Many laws protecting women's health have been overturned, including Roe v. Wade. A study has shown that a third of boys find women's rights unimportant. So the question is, how do we stop our society from regressing even more? To start, be aware of what's going on, have strong beliefs, and act upon those beliefs. Remember Mary Wollstonecraft and the change she was never allowed to make. Maybe, if enough of us carry on her legacy, then we will become the dark, raging waves crashing over the rocky shore. We will become too loud to be blocked out. Remember her words. As she said, the beginning is always today. Thank you.